I hope you guys are having a really good day this morning, evening, afternoon, depending upon where you are, actually, right? Just kind of 4:20 somewhere, I suppose, as they always say. And they mean that in the literal sense, right? There's always 4 o'clock somewhere. But no, I'm glad that you guys can join me. And this has been an interesting news weekend, to put it mildly. There's a lot of big news that has been bubbling up over the course of the weekend that we definitely have to get to. I'm not going to be able to get to it all in one show. Tomorrow's show, I'm going to be able to get to some of it. But nevertheless, let's start. Let's plow in. Shout out to the chat. Thank all of you for joining me. Thank all of you for being here. And for the chat to come, we've already hit, 1:30 within 5 minutes. We've been doing really good with these shows, and our numbers have been going up. And I want to thank all of you for doing that. That's not me and something I can do by myself. That's something that all of you are kind of instrumental in taking place. So thank you all. We are nearly at 60K. Think about that. We've hit 6,000, I think, something like that. I haven't looked at the number, but we're near 60K. So let's keep going. Let's hit that 60K, then that 70K, then 80K, then 100K. I want the YouTube thing where I can put it on the back when I hit that 100K. So every time the show comes up, it is well known that all of us are at 100,000. Let's get to the news, because there's big news. I want to start with what will be a significant story going forward, but hasn't the impact yet because of what else took place over the weekend. So Witkoff gave the proposal, Iran nuclear deal proposal. Now they've had 5 talks, and after the 5 talks, Witkoff finally came out and says, okay, and for the first time wrote down a proposal to Iran. Now, as I pointed out to you, the things that the U.S. has been saying has been somewhat outlandish in regards to what they've been asking for. They've been asking for something that they know right off the bat was a red line, that Iran said, we're not giving up our enrichment. That's the issue of sovereignty. I had Morandi go on yesterday, thank him for staying on for like an hour and 15 minutes, even though he was only supposed to be on for 30 minutes. No, that was not planned. It was just in having a conversation with him, he was bringing up things that I kind of wanted to get across and cross off my list to discuss. But as he pointed out, we are at a crisis point, and we were always going to hit this crisis point. Now, the catch becomes what was in the proposal. And that was the question that I asked Morandi. Did he know? And he didn't necessarily know what was in the proposal. All right. My thing was the proposal different than what Trump had been saying up to this point? Because if you remember, what started off as an issue of enrichment turned into the Libyan model based upon the people who were around Trump, the last person in the room. And then it turned into also, you are supporting terrorism, and we don't want you to support terrorism. Now, this is, drop dead shocking, the level of hypocrisy that a man could bear. It is Herculean in the level of mendacity and the level of hypocrisy for a person to be able to even utter such and not get struck by lightning. My grandfather used to say, if I'm lying, God, strike me dead. Now, he used to always lie. God never used to get involved. On this one, you would have thought maybe God would get involved. The notion that Donald Trump is in Saudi Arabia shaking the hand of a literal head chopper while simultaneously complaining that Iran is back at terrorism is profound. The notion that Donald Trump is murdering civilians or was murdering civilians in Yemen, bragged about it on Twitter, put it in the Department of Defense video, no less, and is talking about terrorism is, again, profound. The idea that we've given 80% of Israel's murder spree in regards to its genocide, to which they were burning kids alive and recently shooting at starving people, again, is profound. So if this is the line of logic that you're going with, I have to come to the assessment that you're not really serious about a peace deal, and that you are assuming and that you've already decided upon a course of action. Now, the U.S. is trying to pretend as if there's some kind of distance between itself and Israel. I don't buy that premise. I just don't. I told you I was skeptical about it all the way through for the last several months. I'm even more skeptical about it now. So we will see what happens going forward. The other thing that took place over the weekend, we have time. Ukraine, boo oucher. I'm going to call it a boo oucher. When we used to play chess at the barbershop, sometimes a move is made and it seems very strong. And you're like, whoa, I didn't see that. That caught me off guard. That move seems strong. But then when you look at it more closely, less so. We used to call those boo ouchers. And the reason we used to call them boo ouchers is because an oucher is something that actually hurts. Boo oucher is kind of like a ghost. Boo oucher. Ukraine was able to score a hit on Russia yesterday in multiple ways. One, terrorism in regards to the railways, where it attacked like 3 or 4 different railroad tracks, blowing up several, killing and injuring several people in the process. That was just terrorism. The second one was a drone strike all across Russia at the various air bases, including on some of the nuclear assets on those Russian airfields, specifically talking about bombers. Now, 2 of those, I don't believe, went anywhere. Russia was effectively, 1 blew up before it even got to where it was supposed to go. In the other cases, you had a truck. The truck was driven to a certain location. As the truck stopped, the drone starts flying out of the truck and attacking military planes, bombers in Russia. And these were even considered, including deep strikes into Russia. I think at one point, one even went to Siberia or something. So initially, people online were reporting, oh my God, 40 planes taken out by the Ukraine. 40 planes. Devastating. And then when the dust settled, it looked like it was about 8 or 9. Now, Russia has a fleet of hundreds of these planes. So 8 or 9 is bad. No, it shouldn't have happened. Yes, it's a security breach. But if you look at what has happened simultaneously, Russia has been expanding and speeding up the pace at which it's been advancing and the number of kills it's been getting against Ukraine. I mean, over the last week, I think it's been like 4,000. Let's say Russia's inflating the number, 3,000. Okay, that compared to you taking out a few planes, which one is more devastating? You tell me. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not minimizing it. And maybe I am on some level, but I'm trying to put it in proper context. A few things on that. I put on Twitter that this was good. This was good. And I know that may be a bit controversial as a point of view, but I want to explain why I'm saying this is good that it happened. One, this is a war. These are military targets. They're fair game. Whereas going after the train is just terrorism. Going after the planes, a fair game. Can't complain that that's terrorism. You got caught with your pants down. Hence, you got hit. It is a war. Start acting like it. 2, Russia's getting complacent. And what I mean by getting complacent, all of this talk about we're winning, we won, this war is over with and everything else. The war is not over with until your opponent dies or until your opponent stops fighting. That is when the war is over with. Up until that point, you are directly involved in a military conflict where they're trying to kill your people and you're trying to kill theirs. It's very clear. Stop acting and being complacent. 3, all of these people who are on Twitter, and I'm not even going to name them, but people who are in independent media and whatnot, who are saying that Trump should pick up the phone and call Putin, just shut up. Just shut up. I'm sorry. And I don't mean that brutally, but you're not helpful. Just be quiet. Truth of the matter is that for all of this talk about Trump or Putin is playing Trump, and that there's a propaganda exercise taking place between Ukraine and Russia because everybody understands that they don't necessarily want talks. And so they're trying to maneuver Trump. Trump is not a mediator. He is a belligerent to this conflict. He is actively giving money, intelligence, support, etc., for Ukraine to kill Russians. Somewhere along the way, many people in social media has taken the Kool-Aid, has drunk the liquid and consumed the pills into this belief that Donald Trump is somehow an actual mediator. When Donald Trump put out his peace plan, and by the way, I've evolved on this. I was the one that was open to see what Trump came out with. And what did he come out with? A nonsense plan that had no chance of getting over the finish line because it was utterly ludicrous. Losers and the people who are losing don't get to dictate terms. And if you are putting out a plan that claims that U.S. troops should be able to be on Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, then you are not being serious. I don't know if you're too incompetent to know that you're not being serious or whether you're just not being serious. Either way, you're not being serious. When Hegseth goes to Europe and say, hey, you need to pick up the pieces because we need to pivot to China, so you guys need to deal with the Russians. Okay, well, that doesn't sound like you're trying to create a sustainable peace. That sounds like you're trying to for a diversification of resources. So for all of this attempts by Putin to not get the lesson from Minsk 1 and 2, to not get the lessons from Istanbul agreements, for him to try to play Western media to get a positive headline, or for that matter, to get one of the belligerents to the conflict, the primary instigator and the primary proponent that keeps the conflict going, to try to win him over to your side. Just stop. Just stop. It's a pointless endeavor. I would even go so far as to say it's a ridiculous endeavor at this point. And for all of those people who are saying, well, Trump should pick up the phone and call Putin. For what? What is he supposed to say on the phone? Hey, man, I didn't know anything about it. For one, I don't believe it. Two, whether it's true or not is irrelevant. Obviously, there was Western help involved in that plan. And fact of the matter is, Trump, again, is belligerent. He's party to the conflict. So for those people who are like, Trump should pick up the phone and call Putin to do what? To get Putin to lessen his response, to lessen the retaliation? And why do you believe that's in Russia's interest to lessen the retaliation? What you should be saying is what I'm saying here, is that Russia should stop fucking around. Full stop. And should prosecute the war with a savage intensity in order to get this war over with. The reality of it is the Trump administration, even though they've moved a bit on this notion that this is a stalemate, still goes along with the idea of, well, this can only end in negotiations. No, it can't. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. Russia has been fighting this war with one arm tied behind its back. And recently, for the longest time, it's been trying to gain America favor, again, a belligerent. And if you don't believe me, look at RT. This nonsense that RT is putting out, trying to distance Trump from what is happening, either in regards to this attack that took place or in regards to where Trump is just left out of the loop. They're doing that to create distance between Trump and what Trump's proxy is doing. That's not helpful. Nor is trying to get Putin to stay his hand helpful. What is helpful is to prosecute this war with the savage intensity to end this war. It's a war. You need to finish it. Full stop. Get rid of this restraint nonsense. The longer you allow this to take place and this war to drag on and to drag on, is more, and the longer you allow NATO to get the opportunity to hit Russia at a distance under this fig leaf of we're not involved. When everybody knows they're involved. Meaning these attacks can only take place, A, because of complacency, and two, because Russia has used so much restraint in the prosecution of this war that it is dragged on and on and on. And considering that NATO wants this war to drag on and on and on, I don't see how this is a successful strategy. If Putin really indeed is trying to stay his hand and they're trying to limit the military activity of the Russian military in order to get favorable headlines, or in order to get Donald Trump to like him better, or to believe that it's Zelensky that's the one that doesn't want terms, that is a fool's errand. The notion that you are telling people, meaning social media, that Russia should believe its enemy in any kind of phone conversation is nonsense. It's nonsense. Russia needs to be more proactive in prosecuting this war. It's that. And what you should be saying on your social media channels, if indeed you want this thing to be over with, is prosecute the war. Not have Trump call Putin and try to con him into not having a response, or con him into lessening the response, or having Trump to say, hey, bro, I'm sorry, I didn't know anything about it. You ready for my ceasefire now? Truth of the matter is, for all of this talk, about Russia maneuvering Trump to get him in a position where he may walk or pull support. What it seems like is that Russian restraint is something that Trump, or let's say the administration, is playing Putin for. The notion that Donald Trump in every situation can say, well, I didn't know anything about it, or I didn't know anything about it. And then when Russia is attacked, he's blissfully unaware. But when Russia attacks, he knows chapter and verse. How's this sustainable? Why do you care about headlines coming out of the West? Why do you care at this point, considering what is taking place and considering that NATO is effectively using Ukraine as an ability and a way to accomplish its objectives, either going after strategic nuclear assets, going after railroads, all of these things for the sole intent of prolonging the war? I'm saying the restraints need to come off. Strategic centers or command centers, fair game. Railroads, fair game. Decision-making centers, fair game. Electricity grid, fair game. All of those things are fair game. Any quasi-factory that is producing anything dealing with military, fair game. The regiment needs to come off the shelf. I'm saying that in order for Russia to get what it wants in regards to a deal, the way it's going about it is not the way to do it. If Donald Trump is going with this belief set, what time is it? If Donald Trump is going along with this belief set that, well, the only way this can end is through negotiations, well, the only way you would come to that assessment is if you have this belief that these things are somehow a stalemate, or that Russia is not moving along the fronts, or that they're not dominating. Then in order to change the context, you need to dominate. You need to dominate clearly, and dominate clearly in a way where it is shockingly and brimingly clear to even your worst enemy that you are not just winning, that your sole objective is to force an unconditional surrender. Under that model, you are more inclined to at the very least change the context in the way that people are seeing it, where you may be able to get a deal in that situation. But under this model, under this assessment, J.D. Vance said it himself. He was like, well, Russia wants too much. Do they now? Russia thinks they're winning and they want too much. Oh, they think they're winning. That needs to change to they are definitively winning. They are definitively crushing the opposition. They are savagely, brutally going after an unconditional surrender. And if indeed the military collapses, or if indeed you are now finding a willing partner at the other end of the table because you've demonstrated dominance to such a magnificent degree that it is unassailable, then you make it your deal. The way this is going, however, is not the way it works. And you are leaving your people out there and allowing these hits on your country. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. Oh, Jesus Christ. All right, so it seems like my guest will not be joining us this morning unless she can figure out how to use StreamYard. Okay. All right. So we have time to talk about other issues because I don't know if she's going to be able to join me. She is apparently having difficulty using StreamYard. I don't know why she's having difficulty using StreamYard, but sometimes it happens. That sucks. So it was former Foreign Minister of Austria, Karin Kneisel, I really wanted her on the show because she knows many of the people in Europe that are in power. And I wanted to get her take on why Europe is going down this fool's errand. Because, look, truth of the matter is, and I don't know if Ukraine has become aware of this or not, that the rationale for Europe to push Ukraine to keep fighting has nothing to do about Ukraine. All of these people who are waving the flags, all of these people who are saying Ukraine is great, oh my God, the Russians, et cetera, et cetera. Those people, yes, there's some useful idiots, fair enough. But from the standpoint of the leadership of Europe, and even from the standpoint of the Donald Trump administration, which is why I keep making this point, Trump is not giving up this idea of hegemonic control of the globe. He's diversifying resources because we've overextended ourselves, and he wants to go into other arenas while allowing what he considers to be vassals to cover another part of the battlefield. So what Europe wants is, we want Ukraine to keep fighting. We want them to bog the Russians down. We want them to fight for as long as possible. If they can fight for 3 years, even better. At that point, we would have drained Russia of resources, manpower over the course of those 3 years. And while we are draining them of resources, we can build up our own military stocks, our own military factories, our own, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, whether they can do this or not is secondary to the point that that's what they want. And it is what they want to try to do, at least on paper, in the way that they're thinking about it. There are all sorts of political reasons why that may not necessarily work. Not just political reasons why that may not necessarily work, even financial reasons why that may not necessarily work. Not to mention that public may take issue with this idea of feeding Europeans to the Russians, which is what would effectively take place. So whereas the US is saying, hey, we want to leave this arena, it's not we want to leave this arena, take our ball and go home. It's we want to leave this arena and leave Europe with the ball in order to handle this theater while we deal with the other theater in China, because we can't deal with China and Russia simultaneously, and we've already overextended ourselves. Hence, Hegseth, lunatic, insane speech that took place, I believe, over the weekend in Singapore. So this idea that Trump is somehow fighting the swamp, that Trump is somehow accepting a multipolar world, nonsense. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's not even apparent that that's what he's doing. And the only thing you have to do is look at what the administration is doing. Trump could have walked in this war. He didn't do that. He didn't just walk. He could have said, this is Joe Biden's war, I'm done. He didn't do that. That's not what he's doing. When he gave a peace deal, he could have gave a peace deal that recognized facts and realities on the ground and told Europe, accept this or I'm out. When Europe would have no capacity at all to do anything about maintaining the war effort. Again, he did not do that. That's not what he did. He is supporting the war effort currently. The US intelligence has been ensconced in Ukraine for decades. And this was true under the Trump administration. This was true under the Obama administration. And it is true now. These attacks that are taking place are coming from the Brits, and intelligence is taking place, and intelligence that they're getting from the United States. So I just want to be very clear about this. Trump is belligerent. He is a party to this war. He is not a mediator. The notion that people are saying they should pick up the phone and call Trump is nonsense. And Putin is nonsense. Nonsense. What is Putin really supposed to say in that phone conversation? Hey, Donald, yeah, man, now that I've talked to you, I realize you're such a credible and trustworthy figure. So I am going to stay my hand in this process. Really? Is that what you want him to do? Is that what you think is in the best interest of the Russian population? Is that really what you think that's in his best interest in a political sense from a population who, again, is probably more in line with Medvedev as opposed to somebody who's more in line with, I don't know, some random peacenik in America that wants Trump to call Putin and con him into not responding? The response should be withering. It's not that what took place was overtly damaging to the war effort. It's not that. It's not that it was this overwhelming attack in the context of what the Russians are doing. For example, there are articles coming out right now from Germany in Zeist, and I may be woefully mispronouncing that. And there's another one, Bild, and another one, Berliner Zeitung. They seem to be very down on this idea of Ukraine's and their war effort. And there seems to be a panic that is in the Ukrainian military at what they see as an overwhelming offensive that is about to come over the horizon. And what they're seeing is that Russia's building up two different militaries, or two additional militaries. Those militaries are full of new equipment. That Russia, for the most part, even though they've been fighting this somewhat restrained, they have, a 1 million-man military at this point, with 300,000 additional soldiers that are fresh, that are being trained, and can enter the battlefield at any particular moment. What they see is a pressure campaign that has taken place on the entire front line that they have been incapable of doing anything about. And for the most part, they've been losing ground faster and losing manpower faster. In this article, she's not coming. I'm assuming she's not coming. So let's keep it moving. Exclusive report from Ukraine. The Russians are coming. We have little chance. Berliner Zeitung. Now that is behind a paywall, but Slavyangrad has various quotes from that particular article, and this article also has quotes from it. It says, exclusive report from Ukraine, the Russians are coming, we have a little chance, and that is effectively what some of the soldiers are saying. It's a pessimism in German media. It turns out that Russia, which is running out of both cannons and soldiers and toilets for a few years now, quote, is moving forward faster and faster on all fronts, according to German experts. Quote, Ukraine is unable to stop this attack. The superiority of the Russian force and infantry is becoming increasingly evident on the battlefield. The ranks of Ukrainian defenders are, quote, noticeably thinning. Reinforcements are in short supply, as are weapons, ammunition, and proper leadership. That is coming from a NATO country. That is not coming from me. That is not coming from RT. I'm saying that they see it on the battlefield. It is something that they are perfectly aware of. I understand that some people will see that and say, well, dude, the Russian plan is working, right? This war of attrition, even though it may be taking several years, seems to be bearing fruit. And I also know, I think it was Mearsheimer that pointed out, the Ukrainian military is going to collapse, and it's going to collapse sooner than what people realize. That may or may not be true. Fair enough. I'm saying even the propaganda victory is too much, especially considering you have a population that sees that, feels some kind of way about those planes getting taken down. You had people who were on the truck trying to use their bare hands to stop the drones from flying out. It was astonishing, just astonishing. Throwing rocks and whatnot, trying to stop the drones from going after the airplanes. Now, part of the issue is that these were part of Russia's strategic nuclear deterrent, which is why this is such a big deal. And you can imagine why this is also such a sultry dish for NATO. I don't know if sultry works in that. A decadent dish for NATO, meaning the balls of NATO to wage war on Russian soil, going after their strategic assets, which is something that obviously NATO will want to go after, is pretty astonishing. And there's a level of seriousness that needs to be instilled as this war proceeds. And they don't take Putin serious. Everything that has been done from the standpoint of pragmatism has been seen purely as weakness. I am not saying go after civilians. I am not saying go kill a lot of people. I am not saying that at all. What I'm saying is this war needs to be prosecuted with the seriousness that it deserves. And complacency, or for that matter, pretending as if Donald Trump is somehow a friend, a mediator, or anything other than a belligerent, is a fool's errand. Trying to get the U.S. to like you better is a fool's errand. Trying to get a positive headline in the United States as if the U.S. papers or any of these papers in the West are going to be fair to you is a fool's errand. Prosecute your war. Full stop. It's just that. It's just that. I just don't understand these people who are like, hey, man, Trump should pick up the phone and call Putin. Why? Why? What do you expect? What do you think is happening with that? Nothing. Why do you think it is in the best interest of Russia to somehow have a conversation with Trump and then moderate that response as if they are a vassal or under the thumb of U.S. interest? Why do you think that? And yet, this is what you got all through social media by people who call themselves analysts and people who are supposed to be independent analysts at that. It's weird. It's utterly bizarre. Just stop. Just stop. Actually, speaking of Ritter, so Ritter, God, man, and I don't want to, I have zero issue with Ritter. I'm saying that now. I'm saying it flat out. I have zero issue with Ritter. There's no feud, there's no argument, there's no anything. I just want to make that very clear. I take issue with some of his takes. It's just that. That's all. He tends to be bombastic, and bombastic in a way that seems to be detached from reality. Again, I'm not taking a shot at him specifically. I'm talking about his point of view. That was true with the Iran issue, where he took this neocon perspective that America is America, Iran is Iran, so if America tells Iran what to do, then Iran should just do it or else. Okay, that's pretty outrageous. That's pretty outrageous. Under that model, you can tell Iran to do anything. Hey, give up your nukes, give up your ballistic missiles, or else. And then what would Ritter be on TV saying? Well, America's America, Iran is Iran. If that's what America is telling you to do, then that's what you should do. It's nonsense. It's a slippery slope argument under this model that Iran should somehow give up sovereignty for protection, as if the moment that you give up sovereignty, your ability to protect yourself goes along with it. It's nonsense. Ritter comes out with this article. Now, I saw him on, I think it was Danny's show. On that show, he was right. He pointed out that there was no way for this government under Trump to be able to effectuate a deal. He is perfectly right. And it should be obvious, either with Iran, either with Hamas, or for this matter, with the nonsense that they're putting out in regards to a plan. And it kind of goes back to my point. Until it is brimmingly clear that you are dominating to such a dominant, overwhelming degree that the West can no longer come up with this nonsense that, well, it must be a peace proposal to end the conflict, then your chances of actually getting a proposal are nil. You're going to get these ridiculous plans that Trump is coming out with. Here's a 22-point plan in order to end the war. Okay, this is nonsense. This is a plan in order to freeze the conflict, just like Syria was a frozen conflict, that the next administration, or at the most inopportune time, it can spring back up. There's also something else with that. I strongly suspect, before I go into the Ritter thing, I strongly suspect that from Putin's point of view, this mission is philosophical. It's not just ethical and legal in the way that I have an ethical legal responsibility to defend Mother Russia. It's not just that. I strongly suspect that this is on my watch, and I'm going to solve this on my watch. I'm not handing this off to somebody else that may F this up. I and my team are going to deal with this, and we're going to deal with it now. Even if we have to shoot one Ukrainian in the face to do it, even if we have to fight NATO to do it, I am going to solve this now. Now, the trick is to be able to thread your way through it without getting into a larger conflict with NATO. And up to this point, Putin has been successful in doing that. Somebody like me would have been in a war with NATO right now. So fair enough. But I strongly suspect that in a way that Americans don't fully get, because we don't trust our leaders on this stuff, and oftentimes they're going into wars for craven reasons. These aren't just war; these are just wars of choice that America gets involved in. That we don't quite get on a gut level what it means to take on the responsibility of defending a country and defending a territory. Whereas in his case, because he is in that spot, because they have a history of the First and Second World War where their country was invaded through Ukraine, no less, multiple times, even go back to Napoleonic Wars, that tradition, that need to fight, to defend yourself from existential wars is ever present in a way that we don't get. I strongly suspect that he has taken this as a mission, almost as a messianic mission. And I don't mean it in the lunatic Zelensky sense. I mean it in the, this is my country, I'm going to defend my country. The barbarians are at the gates. I didn't want this war. This war was thrust upon us, but damn it, I'm going to finish this war, and I'm going to ensure the integrity and the safety of my country for when I am not here. Whereas from the US point of view, we need to freeze this conflict. We need to pause this. Putin is not going to be there forever. And at some point, we will find somebody who will make bad choices or worse choices than what Putin is doing, or somebody maybe we can influence, or maybe at a more inopportune time for Russian government. Meaning, for them, Putin is a problem. And on some level, they accept he's a problem, and a problem that they can't necessarily solve or get rid of through military or economic means. And so if you can freeze the conflict until there's no longer a Putin, then your chances of trying to get something done may be better in the future, as opposed to trying to get it done now, where obviously it's not going to get done. I mean, that airfield attack, put it in perspective. It puts me in mind of the Avengers when Iron Man is fighting Thanos. Yes, that's how my mind works, I'm sorry. And Iron Man does all of this fantastic stuff. I mean, he is like at the limits of his skills and capability. And the best he can do is cut Thanos on his face. And Thanos like, all that for a drop of blood. That's what it's kind of like. They spent a year and a half planning this attack, a year and a half. And in that year and a half, we're supposed to expect that the US knew nothing about it, that Trump knew nothing about it, for something that took a year and a half to plan. And the best that you were able to get was about 9 planes. How do you replicate that? Meaning, even if I accept it was a success, and it was on some level a success, propaganda-wise and reality-wise, how do you replicate that? And considering that the thing that you did was take down planes, this is not even necessarily a body count. So you spent all of that time to plan something, and the best that you can do is take down 8 planes out of a fleet of like 200. How's that sustainable? How's that sustainable? That is a lot for that muffler. That's all I'm saying. Which add more credence to this idea that obviously the US knew. I don't buy it for a moment that Trump didn't know. It is pretty, it's not coincidental, the word I'm looking for. It's pretty rich that in every situation, Trump is either unaware, uninformed, doesn't read, or for that matter, just was not told. Isn't that convenient? Isn't that convenient? So going back to Ritter for a moment, Ritter playing with fire. Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb is called Cross the Threshold when it comes to triggering a Russian nuclear response. How Russia and the United States respond could determine the fate of the world. Now, I read the article. This first line set me off a bit. Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb is, and by the way, Operation Spiderweb was the name of it. Operation Spiderweb has crossed the threshold when it comes to triggering a Russian nuclear response. And I thought to myself, is he trying to say that Russia is going to respond in nuclear means? Now, it's true that Russia's updated the nuclear doctrine. Oh, you didn't see it. It's true that Russia's updated the nuclear doctrine. That part is true. It is true also that Russia has effectively said, look, an attack, depending upon what that attack is, and if that attack is coming from, let's say, NATO forces, whether it's nuclear or not, can create a nuclear response just for what the attack is. That is also true. But this line comes across as if he's trying to imply that there's going to be some kind of nuclear response. Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb has crossed the threshold when it comes to triggering a Russian nuclear response. No, it hasn't. It hasn't. That's ludicrous. The notion that they take out 9 planes, even though those planes deal with strategic nuclear assets, and that the response of Russia is going to somehow be nuclear is ludicrous. And this is the same thing when it came to the Iran issue, where Scott was making this argument that the US was somehow going to nuke Iran in an unprovoked nuclear attack. Again, this seems outlandish to me. Yeah, it's good to sell, or get people to read the article, but in reality, less so. For one, it gives the people who are doing this stuff exactly what they want, which is an overreaction. There's that. 2, Russia has missiles below the nuclear threshold that are devastating. Meaning you don't even need to go to nukes. The Oreshnik by itself is a terrifying weapon that is not a nuke, that burns nearly at the temperature of the sun. So the idea that you need to have a nuclear response for something because of drones seems outlandish. Then when you read the article, he's not really saying that. When you go into the article, he's saying something a little different. His argument in the article is effectively, we are whistling past the graveyard. And if stuff like this keeps going on, where the war keeps continuing, and it keeps continuing, and NATO gets more desperate and more brash, then we could reach a point where this devolves into a nuclear conflict. Look at what's taking place in the Baltic, for example. You have Estonia, of all places, working with other NATO countries in order to try to go after Russian ships, in which case Russia nearly fired on one of those ships if that ship wasn't going to stop going after one of its cargo. Meaning you had an airplane that came out of the blue that was going to light the Estonian ship up if it didn't leave that Russian ship to its devices. Meaning you're getting closer and closer of this notion of rubbing edges to the point where there could be an attack. Look at the Taurus missile issue. I'm of mind that Germany has already given the Taurus missiles to Ukraine. I don't really care what the German government says. And if indeed the German government, or let's say Ukraine, fires one of those missiles at Moscow, I strongly believe that all logic in the world demands that Russia hits the place where that missile came from or where that place was manufactured in Germany. Whether that provokes a larger war with NATO is irrelevant. It has to be irrelevant. Because if that's your model, where your argument is, well, we don't want to provoke a larger war with NATO, so NATO can do pretty much anything, that is a problematic tick. Because what that means is they can put troops in Ukraine, because again, what are you going to do if you can't attack NATO because you're scared of triggering a larger war? You can get hit, Storm Shadows and all of these other missiles on Russian cities, meaning the moment that you allow one to hit one of your cities without a response, you've just allowed 20 to hit your cities without a response. You're forced by the logic of the event to respond. Now, Germany seems to have gotten the hint and have at the very least acknowledged, okay, we don't want to get hit. So what we would do is help build those in Ukraine and let Ukraine do it. Okay, you can do that. At the very least, those are factories that are going to get lit up at the first opportunity when those things are going to get built. I have a hard time believing those factories are going to be finished at all before those things get destroyed. I'm trying to point out that Ritter is not wrong in this. That the longer this, and again, this goes back to my original point, get this shit over with, prosecute this war and get it over with. The longer this goes on, the more of a chance you have for either an accident or some rando goofball that believes the Russians are bluffing. So let's push it further. And we all end up in a larger catastrophic situation. So yeah, the headline for it is outlandish. The article itself is correct. See, I'm fair when it comes to Ritter. I don't take issue with Ritter at all. It's just the bombastic stuff can be a bit outlandish at times. All right, so let's go to something else. We've hit the Russian thing and we hit it pretty hard. This is going to be, I suspect that what Mark is going to say is, look, we're prosecuting the war. even though this is a propaganda victory, Russia doesn't necessarily change its military doctrine for propaganda reasons. And so, they're going to maintain what's working and keep moving with what's working. I just don't buy that logic. Let's go back to Iran for a bit to be more fleshed out with that. So this is going to be a big deal. This is going to be a big